Hello and welcome to this lecture on structured references in Excel. Let me start with what. What is a structured reference in Excel? A structured reference is a reference that includes the actual table name or a column header as opposed to standard cell references or range addresses. The syntax for this: instead of using a column reference followed by a row reference as a basic cell address, we use table name followed by an opening square bracket followed by a qualifier, which is going to be your column header, followed by a closing square bracket. Anywhere you can use a normal cell reference or range of addresses, you can use a structured reference. We have fully qualified versus unqualified cell references. In a fully qualified structured reference, the table name will always precede the column qualifier in square brackets. In an unqualified structured reference, you leave the table name off and you simply have the column qualifier within square brackets. If you are working in an Excel table that you're putting a formula inside the table because you're creating some type of calculated column, you would then not need to use the fully qualified structured reference. You can use the unqualified with just the column header inside of square brackets. If you are creating a calculated column or formula outside of an Excel table that will be referencing a structured reference within that Excel table, you must use a fully qualified structured reference so that your formula will know where to look for that column reference. Next, let's talk about why. Why use structured references in your Excel formulas? One of the biggest reasons is that they can simplify your formulas. They can make it simpler to identify what cells you are referring to in your formula. It's easier to understand formulas when you use either these structured cell references or defined names. So when do you use them? Always, in my opinion, if you're building worksheets, workbooks that you will either be sharing with other users or you will be using infrequently and you want to be sure you understand what you were doing when you come back to that workbook. My reference on when to use them again is simply as frequently as possible. Most of the spreadsheets we will build that we are sharing with other users are going to be complex workbooks, making complex calculations. This is an excellent time to use structured references so that you can make it easier to understand the formulas when you're reviewing the work. Last, here are some examples of what a structured reference looks like in a formula. Here I have, in the first example of using the sum, a fully qualified reference. The basic structure of every sum or function in Excel always starts with the function name followed by an opening and a closing parenthesis. Within the parentheses are the function arguments. The sum function, when using a structured reference such as I'm showing you here, does not require more than one argument. The argument is, here in the fully structured one, the table name, i.e. employee table, followed by a open square bracket, followed by the qualifier, in this case annual salary is the name of the column, followed by a closing square bracket, and last is our closing parenthesis for the sum function. If I was doing this within the Excel table named employee table, and I was creating a formula, I could just use an unstructured reference that references the qualifier, the column label, employee or annual salary within the employee table. In closing, remember, structured references are great ways to make it easier to understand and simplify your formulas. They're very easy to use. You can type the syntax out yourself, or you can use the click method of creating those structured references. There are two types: the fully qualified structured reference and the unqualified. The difference being the use of the table name as part of your structured reference. You use the fully qualified structured reference when working a formula that's pulling data from a table but not inside and part of the table. You can use the unqualified that just uses the qualifier in square brackets as your cell reference inside of the table itself when making calculations or in a calculated formula or column.